Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experience in applying to study medicine. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. Originally from remote Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean, Jean-Baptiste Philibert, or JB to his friends, has certainly had a unique medical journey. From breakfast chef to clinical placements in regional Australia, JB shares insights into his pursuit of medicine and the unique challenges he's embraced along the way. It's a fascinating conversation that explores the unexpected twists and turns of his medical journey, offering valuable advice for aspiring students. But first, Jean-Baptiste starts by describing why he became a doctor to Nicole Goodman.
I actually always considered the idea of being a doctor. I grew up on a small island called Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. That's quite remote. It's French overseas territory, hence the accent. And unfortunately, I was probably not always a very good student. I finished high school at 16, and I was probably not terribly focused on career choices, even though I had this kind of idea in the back of my mind. So I never actually tried to apply. I ended up traveling. I moved to Australia. I was an international student, studied accounting. I worked. I lived in several Australian states, such as WA, Tasmania. But then eventually, after working for a few years, at the age of 29, I decided that I needed to do something different. And if I wasn't going to try to do what I wanted to do now, I would probably always regret it. So, I was always happiest when I worked with people and enabled change and helped people in a way. And I guess the profession of medicine just came to mind as what I should give a go.
That's amazing. So not something that you particularly longed to do or a massive goal, but something that kind of came to you over time. Were there any other health professions that you considered at the time other than being a doctor specifically?
I've got to be honest, I wasn't completely, in touch with the Australian health system and just the diversity and the breadth of it, which is actually quite incredible. I guess, as a young 20-something-year-old, I didn't really encounter the health system, luckily for me. And so I didn't actually get to consult anyone other than a GP maybe once every couple of years when I did something specific or when I was sick. So, now that I reflect on it, I might have considered other professions, but not at the time.
What might have you considered had you been a bit more aware of what was on offer?
I think physiotherapy is a really interesting profession. I think the ability to change people's lives, but I've also learned a lot about occupational therapy. I think that's something new and kind of broad and exciting. But overall, I'm still very happy with my choice of future career.
Absolutely. I think the medical profession is definitely lucky to have you, for sure. Now, you used to be a breakfast chef and a tour guide in Central Australia. What was that like? And dare I say, how different from medicine?
Yeah, so I did do a few different professions. I think the joys of being an international student in Australia meant that you had to find ways to support yourself and grab whatever came your way. I did guide tours up north in Western Australia, yes, and I thought that was probably my first encounter of rural Australia and what it looked like, and being based in Perth for a long time. Those are the professions that I did and the variety of employment. I think I learned a lot. I learned probably discipline, and I learned that, you got to work hard for what you want. And that's probably what I was missing when I wasn't, daring to apply for medicine and eventually did.
Now, you studied at Bathurst Rural Clinical School campus. Has your clinical experience been different to your previous metro placements, and in what way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main difference is just the fact that it's quite small and everyone knows you. And I think that sense of belonging that you get in a rural school is not something that you would get in a metro place. You might get to know some wonderful people in metro, but then you move on and it's a whole new world within the same hospital. While, when you're moving from a general surgery to a general medicine within the same hospital, and that's all there is really, you're going to be seeing the same people all over again anyway. So there's less anonymity, which can be a scary thought, but it's something I really enjoyed. And just the ability of just going down to what we call the basement, where the admin staff, their office is, and just going down for a chat and just them knowing all about our lives is just something that's really cool.
Yeah. Tell me about your time in Bathurst. What was that like, being in such a rural community? What was it like to study medicine and also to live and have a life in a rural community?
I think it was one of the best experiences I had in medical school, if not the best. I already almost knew it going in, but it didn't disappoint. I think there was a few components to it. So we actually went through medical schools during COVID. And so there was a lot of disconnection from before COVID and after COVID. And I think that made a big difference. So I think a lot of us, so we moved as a group and a lot of us kind of were yearning for that connection again. And really battles didn't disappoint. We lived together. We were right next to the hospital. But even though we were, I guess, that cohort effect, we still integrated in the community really well. And I think, when you show up to trivia nights in one pub or to karaoke night in another, and everyone knows you're the medical students, even though you don't know anyone, even though it's, a big town, there's still very much that rural effect where everyone just knows you and everyone just welcomes you. And I think that was probably really a great example of what it is. And then from a medical point of view, I mean, it's always fascinating because obviously you've got, as I was saying, a general medicine, general surgery kind of a hospital with pre-care, but really they deal with so much and help is much further than it should be. So I think you actually get exposed to a breadth of experiences, which you wouldn't get in, a very specific subspecialized term in metro. So even though that's what everyone says, it's true. It does happen everywhere. And I think that medically it was fantastic, but really the human experience of being out in a town where everyone knows you within a couple of weeks, I think was really cool.
Amazing. Where are you at now with study and what's next?
Yeah, so actually I finished my last day of placement ever last Friday, which was very exciting.
Congratulations.
At last, after 3 years of placements.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually back in Sydney. So after Bathurst, I had to do a couple terms metro, and I also did a term out in Broken Hill, which was also really exciting at the Aboriginal Medical Service, which was, again, another wonderful rural community that I got to know very quickly. And so now I've finished my placements. I'm actually waiting to start my employment in Albury-Wodonga. So as part of my New South Wales RDN cadetship, I've agreed to go back out rural, which is definitely not twisting my arm. And so I got selected for Albury-Wodonga Hospital, which is very exciting.
Wonderful. Congratulations. That's so exciting. Now, let's go back to when you first decided to study medicine. Did you tell anyone, and what was their reaction if you did?
So I did tell my partner at the time, and I guess she also pushed me a little bit, which is probably what I needed, because it was kind of that idea that came back every couple of years, something would go wrong at work or whatever, and I'd be like, I'm just going to leave everything and study again. But I probably never intended to actually do it. And at some point she was just like, just do it. And so I think that's probably what I needed. But I didn't really tell many other people. I understood how competitive medicine was and just, a scary thought of doing it at the age of 28. And I didn't really understand the processes of getting into medicine either when I started. So I guess there was a lot of unknowns. And so I just probably gave myself a year to figure it out and get the things that I needed in place to get in. And if I didn't get in, I was happily going to, consider alternative careers.
So there was no mentor specifically or anyone who gave you guidance before being accepted into medicine?
No, I'm all for recognizing the people that have helped me along the way. But sadly, there was not, I guess, it's a common story, but it's not something I was lucky to have. And I've met some incredible people along the way now. But at the start, no, I figured it out through blogs online and just talking to people.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're alone. I think there are many medical students that also don't have a mentor, certainly at the start, and go through similar processes that you did. So when you did decide to apply, was there any plan at all? Were there any particular first steps that you took?
Yeah, so actually, as I mentioned, I studied accounting before, but I was probably not a great student. So I did need to probably up my marks a little bit. So I was in Tasmania at the time. And so I studied for that year that I was kind of trying to figure out how to get in. I studied like scientific subjects through like a medical science degree. And I did really well, which kind of surprised me in a way. And then in the meantime, tried to figure out, obviously, how to get in. So I found out that obviously you had to do the UMAT at the time, which is now called UCAT. And then there was interviews. Interviews is probably the one thing I wasn't too worried about. But the UMAT was something that I'd never really heard of. So I had a couple months to kind of try to figure out what it was, see, a couple of past exams and what it entailed, and then went from there.
Was there a plan B if you didn't get into medicine? Had you thought that far ahead?
Well, I think I told myself that I wasn't going to be someone that would try for years, partly because of my age. I was 28, 29, and I just couldn't really afford to be a forever student again. I'd studied already once, and I think that was enough. And so I just tried for a year. I always have 20 million plan Bs in my head. I still do now, even though I've done medicine. So that's not something that's always missing. I'd considered, going into chefing or moving overseas, Canada, or just plenty of things that I worked out in my head. So that wasn't lacking.
Yeah. And how many universities did you end up applying to?
So I was actually applying only for the undergrad medicine because I only sat the UMAT. And so there was actually only a few that took old people. So, mature age students. So yes. I ended up only applying to University of Tasmania, Western Sydney University, where I'm finishing now, and University of Newcastle.
Mm-hmm. And what was involved in that application process, and how did you prepare for the interviews? Because it's quite an intimidating process. It's a big moment.
Absolutely. So I guess I had that bit of low self-esteem happening. So I just took it one at a time because I didn't really think there'd be a next step after that. So as I said, I prepared quickly for UMAT and then sat it and then just kind of waited for results. But I never thought I'd kind of make the score because, you read things online about people having to score 99th percentile and things like that. And it's all very scary. Anyway, so then I did better than I thought at the UMAT. So I was like, well, I best apply for the 3 medical schools that are listed. And so then I looked at the next step, and it seemed to be, multiple mini interviews, which didn't mean much to me at the time. And so luckily I got that prior experience. I've sat many, many interviews, whether it was for a casual job or, a permanent job in public service. And they all gave me that kind of experience and confidence that actually you just got to be yourself in that interview moment, because that's all they want to see. They're not looking for specific skills or anything like that. And that's how it works anyway, I think, in the real world. So I felt that medicine would be similar. So I can't say I prepared too hard for the interviews. I'd probably read things and kind of got an idea of what was happening, but I just thought I'd be confident and walk in and just be myself. And if they wanted that, then I guess good for them.
So overall then, how was your application experience for medicine, and what advice do you have for anyone considering applying for a medical degree?
I think it's being confident in who you are and what you have. I think that's probably what got me over the line. I didn't think it too hard and just went step by step. And I think interviews, especially for me, were probably the part that I was, I guess, confident with, because I wasn't really confident with anything else. And I found it really fun. I've got to say, I probably picked my university based on the interview experience. So Western Sydney was the interview that I felt I did the best at. I had a great time. Every station was interesting. It was a different person asking you a different question. I got to say, I love talking about myself, so that helped. And I just used my own perspective, which they didn't require any kind of medical knowledge or any kind of medical experience. They just needed you to be a good person, I think. That's the idea that I got. And I just used that experience. I was confident, and I didn't really feel like I needed to talk too much, which is actually a kind of an exploit for me. But at that moment, I just felt like I gave an answer, and then I was pretty happy with it. And I just was happy to finish on that.
Let's talk about studying for a minute. There's a lot of different study techniques that people have and different things that they do. Have you found the right one for you? And if you have, what is it?
Oh, I think medicine is an ever-evolving field, so do you ever know how to study? Yeah. But in first year, I think I figured it out. I had to figure it out pretty quickly because it all hits you very, very fast. And so I think I had my kind of old ways of doing it with handwriting and things like that, just showing my age again. But eventually I did use an app called Anki, which is a flashcard app. And I think that worked really well for preclinical, where I just put everything that was on slides and knowledge base in there and just kind of somehow put it in my brain afterwards by the time exams came. So I think for clinical medicine, it's probably been more challenging. And that's something I'm still kind of working with, because it's the field has broadened so much from preclinical, which is very much like basic science knowledge, and then you get into clinical medicine, and anything and everything you've got to know. So that's something I'm still working on, and I think hopefully by the time I'm done with internship, I'll have a better answer for you.
Sure, that's fair enough. Now, we've touched on it a little bit, but a lot of people in medicine experience imposter syndrome. Is that something you experienced? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Absolutely. I think there's several, layers, and I think everyone has those layers, right? But the obvious one for me starting medical school in Sydney was I wasn't from Sydney. I was, quite a bit older than everyone else. It's an undergrad degree, and, I was nearing 30, which was a little bit sad for me. But in the big scheme of things, it's not that much. But that's, what you tell yourself at the beginning. I sound the way I am. I'm French, grew up in many places, lived in many places. So I guess I just stood out, whether that was, and not in I wanted to stand out. You just do because you're just different. And I think that's okay. But I think it takes time to just accept because, you're dealing with a lot. You've got a lot of information, a whole new world, a whole new industry that you're learning very, very quickly. And no one's there waiting for you to kind of catch up to it. So I think when you feel like you stand out and you feel like you shouldn't be there, just remember that, they picked you for a reason and you're there for a reason. And there's a reason why you applied to start with. So I think that's probably what I told myself. And I think getting involved in the things I got involved with as well, like all the extracurriculars, really helped me kind of solidify my confidence in being where I am instead of maybe just kind of sticking to my one, medical school and my one clinical school where I am. I got to meet a lot of wonderful people that, I related to. So it was great.
Tell me, is there one piece of advice that you wish you were given before starting your medical journey that would have made it a little bit easier or that would have helped you?
I think I've got a two-pronged answer to that. So I think if I had been told that to just trust myself and it'll work out in the end, and I think that's a bit of a theme going in the things I've been saying, but I think there's something you need to hear because every day is a challenge and every day is new. And 5 years doesn't sound like a long time when you start, which is the length of my medical degree, but at the end of it, it feels like a really long time. And you just got to have that just desire to keep going. But I think the piece of advice that I actually gave myself when I started, and that worked out really well for me, or at least I feel like it does, is to just say yes to everything. So that was my way of going in. So I felt like this was kind of my second chance, to catch up to the things I maybe didn't do or couldn't do when I, first arrived in Australia and I was international student, didn't know what I was doing. And so that idea of saying yes to everything really gave me a lot. So, during orientation, I got to chat to somebody that was in the year above me about, Rural Health Club and how they have to do high school visits. And I was like, oh, well, when I was in Tasmania, I got to actually do high school visits for disadvantaged high schools and talk to them by universities. And I've done a lot of that kind of work and outreach. And they were like, well, do you want to join us? And I was like, I didn't know what a Rural Health Club was. I knew there was Rural Australia and I knew health, but I didn't really kind of understand between the two. And I think from there, it just snowballed into something much bigger. So as a result, I got to join my Rural Health Club. Then I joined the national body, which is the National Rural Health Student Network, which I ended up being the chair of last year. And during that, largest multidisciplinary student health network in the country, just gave me so many opportunities. I got to present at conferences. I got to talk to ministers and just from this tiny start that I had at the beginning. And I think that's something that you don't get if you're not there or if you're not saying yes, or if you're not engaging. But don't go there with the plan that that's what's going to happen because you don't know. So I think, saying yes to everything is what I told myself. And I think that was the best thing I could do.
Yeah, and just take every opportunity. Lastly, JB, what is it about medicine that you feel you could just never have prepared for?
I think it's the pace. I think for me, it's just you can never be comfortable. There's always someone around that knows more and is smarter than you. And that's a good thing. We want that because we want, the best care for patients. And it's not all about one individual. So I think just that ability of being surrounded by incredible people at a very fast pace and, unrelenting pace, really. But I think medical school prepares you for that and just puts you out there in the world and it's confronting. But I think you just get on the wagon and you're happy to kind of go along for it because it's an incredible ride. You meet some incredible people and I've met so many of them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever's next.
That's Jean-Baptiste Philibert, a final year medical student at Western Sydney University. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.